This episode is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, which means I don't see any buffering or lagging while I'm streaming football matches or movies. And its threat protection feature keeps me and my devices safe from viruses, malicious malware, and phishing sites, all for just the price of a cup of coffee a month.
Using NordVPN, I can switch my virtual location, allowing me to save money by purchasing flights, hotels, and subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price, or watch sporting events, TV shows, and films which aren't available in my region. For someone like me who travels a lot, being able to access football from back home using NordVPN and a UK virtual location is essential. NordVPN also protects my data while I'm travelling and using public Wi-Fi, wherever I am in the world. On top of all that, I can use one NordVPN account on up to 10 devices.
To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/priceoffootball. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. It's Questions Day, Kieran. I have one question for you. You've just come back from my favourite country. What were you doing there?
I was talking to the Belgian Pro League in Antwerp in Belgium, which helps being in Belgium. I guess it is the Belgian Pro League. About the relative state of Belgian football compared to the rest of Europe.
Ooh.
You can just imagine how fascinating that was. Well, it was for me because it gave me the opportunity to go and create some more spreadsheets full of fun and games. So that was jolly good fun. So that was what I was doing on Monday. Tuesday, it's the PFA. Wednesday, I'm going up to that there Parliament to teach that there lot. And then Thursday, it's FIFA. So I'm Billy Whiz this week.
Wow, where are you doing FIFA?
I've not looked that far ahead, which I really isn't very organised of me. I tend to fly by the seat of my pants a bit.
Well, the thing is, Kieran, if you're speaking to Belgium about Belgian football, you've got a fair guess it's going to be in Belgium.
Yes.
FIFA, on the other hand, is a slightly bigger remit, so that could be anywhere.
Yes, I really ought to check the small print when I say yes to these things.
Yeah, we've got a recording to fit in on Wednesday as well, Kieran. We had a nice time in Brighton, I think we should say, before we carry on. Sorry, it's Questions Day, Kieran. So we said, did we have a nice time in Brighton, Kieran?
We had a fantastic time, and most importantly, we've raised around about £3,000 for Samaritans.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic news. And yes, they all love you as well, don't they? All the Labradoodle quinoa eaters think Kevin Bay is their favourite Crystal Palace fan.
I always like it when you've got a room full of people who forget that they're dealing with a professional comedian who's been doing it when they try and take me on and be funny. It's like, I've been doing this a while. But our guest, it was really, I can't tell you how annoying it was to spend the night. We had Paul Mullen, who's the Director of Operations at Brighton.
Yes, Chief Operating Officer.
Chief Operating Officer, yes. So that was a 20-minute interview where basically, we learned how to run a football club, and there was me and 3 other Palace fans in the room, which didn't go down particularly well. Luckily, one of the Palace fans gave me a lift home, so we had an hour and a half on the way back with that smug Brighton with a 10-year forward planning and no. Anyway, his questions, and our first question, Kieran, comes from a Palace fan. It comes from Nobby Clark, who you've met. Nobby Clark is a doyen of the Parsons Arms. Nobby Clark and I have an unofficial competition as to who can get there earliest on match days, and it's normally Nobby who wins. Nobby has a good question, and he says, I don't think you've discussed this previously. That's a value judgment, Nobby, in case you're here. But I have a question about free agents and amortisation. As an example, Palace signed Jefferson Lerma on a free transfer. If the deal involved a large signing-on fee for the player, is the club able to amortise that over the length of his contract? Now, this is an interesting one, Kieran, because Jefferson Lerma, it was a very good bit of business for us at the start of last season, because you'd imagine he would cost a lot of money, but he came to us for nothing, so we're guessing that the signing-on fee was huge. So can you amortise that?
Effectively, yes, you can. If we take a look at the case of Kylian Mbappe, for example, when he joined Real Madrid from PSG, it's estimated that he's getting 150 million signing on fee, signs a 5-year deal. You can spread that over the life of the contract. And similarly, the agent's fee, because the agents tend to be acting in the best interests of their clients and also potentially getting a significant sum themselves in respect of getting the club and the player to sign off on the contract. The agent's fees, which could run into millions as well, that can also be capitalised and effectively amortised. So instead of giving compensation to the previous employer, you are effectively committing the player to sign for X years, and those additional costs can be written off over the life of the contract.
Daniel Norman has this question. Daniel says, how does a sell-on fee work if the sold player is part of a player swap? I know you talk, in brackets, a lot about amortisation and booking profits and losses on player sales, but if I was selling a player in a swap, would I not be incentivised to put as low a value on the players as possible to reduce the sell-on fee and VAT bill? Now, I'm going to point out, Kieran, we're recording this quite late on a Monday night, and I've had a glass of wine, so I think I deserve a round of applause for getting the word incentivised right first time.
Very good, yes, indeed. Thank you. Daniel is 100% correct in terms of this topic, because if we take, for example, when Spurs signed Bobby Zamora from Brighton, they then swapped him for Jermaine Defoe. I think they went in opposite directions. So that was a player swap, and Brighton had a sell-on in respect of Zamora. So I think Spurs signed Zamora for $1.5 million. Didn't have the greatest part of his career at Spurs. I think he only scored 1 goal. He was swapped a few months later for Jermaine Defoe, and by all accounts, the agreed fee in respect of Zamora was quite low, which meant that Spurs had to give a low number to Brighton in terms of whatever it was, say 20%. 20% of nothing is nothing, and that was also potentially reflected in the swap price in respect of Defoe. So I've got to stop saying in respect of. Apparently, one of our listeners has picked up on this, so I'm now going to be hypersensitive if I ever repeat that phrase once more during the course of the evening. So Nobby is correct. There's ways to manipulate numbers both up and down when dealing with player swaps and dealing with any form of player transfer. And this is one example. And clearly the benefits to the selling club, for want of a better phrase, is that they have to give 20% or 10% of a lower figure, and therefore they can keep more of the money themselves, and it reduces the effective purchase price for the player coming their way as well.
I think you're still on Belgian time, Kieran. You're jet lagged, because that was Daniel's question. We did Nobby's question first, so it was Daniel that was correct, not Nobby. And also, what's wrong with in respect of?
I say it too often.
Do you?
Apparently.
Okay, I don't mind you saying in respect of. It's when you use impact as a verb. I don't mind. I don't like you saying impacted.
Okay.
But that's fine. Let's not start bickering about the correct use of English this time of night, Kieran. When you've just come back from a language where they speak a language where they speak two countries, a country where they speak two a country where they speak two languages. If I'm taking umbrage on your behalf now, you say in respect. I'm going to start saying in respect of. No, in respect of Tom Blickliffe, who has our next question. Tom Blickliffe asked, on the face of it, a very simple question. What is the earliest point at which you can sell a season ticket for the following season? And now I assume Tom Blickliffe is talking about when clubs can sell a season ticket for the following season, because I'm already thinking about selling my season ticket for next season. To be perfectly honest, the way things are going, I probably will buy one, but I might be selling it quite quickly. It's an interesting one, this game, because we've seen before with clubs trying to sell 3-year season tickets. So it's an interesting one where, could a club sell a season ticket now for next season?
It certainly could. The downside of that is you're giving away next season's price. And let's say that the club's not having the best of seasons and you're trying to wangle an extra 5% out of fans and you're at the wrong end of the division come mid-November, it makes it very difficult to win the argument. Therefore, clubs historically have delayed until March, but there's nothing to stop them. And I think there is a case for saying, let's advertise next season's season ticket prices before Christmas, because then it can become a Christmas gift, especially if it's for a loved one who is mad keen on the club, or is it's one of the kids and you want to give them their first season ticket along with the show, along with the kit and so on. So from that perspective, I think there are advantages in accelerating it. In terms of when they're going to be physically on sale, what clubs tend to do is they tend to leave it to normally March or April to try to get as much money as they can from fans before the end of the season. And effectively, it's a bit like squirrels, gathering up nuts before the start of the winter, because, of course, in June and July, you've got no home fixtures taking place. Therefore, you've not got the benefits of matchday income, and the cash that you've saved up pre the end of the previous season can be used to pay the wages and to pay the other operational costs over the course of the summer. You mentioned multi-year season tickets. I think Sheffield Wednesday have the longest starting ones. I think we've covered that story before. I think theirs were 10 years. And the intriguing element of those is that the countdown in terms of when 10 years becomes 9, becomes 8, and so on, I think that only kicks in once Sheffield Wednesday reach the Premier League. So if you had bought one 2 or 3 seasons ago, 10, you've still got 10 years remaining, because they're not there yet.
Producer Guy's whiskers would have started twitching as soon as you mentioned squirrels, because there's nowhere else to go other than nuts with squirrels, especially where you're. You know what Producer Guy's like with that sort of thing. I think we must have discussed this, but if a club is, say, 4th in the Championship in November, December, would they not offer fans a punt and say, look, we could be in the Premier League, so why don't you buy a season ticket now at this price? And if we're in the Premier League, you've got a bargain, and if we're not, you haven't lost much money.
Yes, we do see many early bird offers coming from clubs to try to encourage fans to buy season tickets or to renew season tickets as early as possible. And that's often done. In fact, that's normally done at some point in the previous season when there is still an element of jeopardy remaining in terms of promotion, relegation, getting into Europe, or whatever the potential benefit could be. So it is taken seriously at all clubs, and there will be conflabs, and there's no right answer. There can occasionally be wrong answers, but there's no right answer as to when the actual announcement should take place. If you're going to put it up a lot, personally, I'd always put it up after a big victory because people are still on a high and they go, well, you've beaten such and such a team. But if you're going to reproduce matches like that, then fans tend to be a bit more amenable.
Oh, well, we're all looking forward to the New Year's Day half-price season ticket sale at Palace for next season. Sarah Wilson has a question, Kieran, which I think when we started the pod would have seemed like a doomsday scenario. But Sarah is American, and increasingly she might have her finger on the pulse here. Sarah says, do teams or leagues have plans for climate change affecting games and schedules? I'm from the US, and we deal with a lot of climate events that could make hosting games impossible: flooding, wildfire, smoke, heat, ice, snow, etc. We're seeing an increase in frequency and severity of climate catastrophe globally, and it feels inevitable that climate disaster will disrupt scheduled events, including regular season games as well as major tournaments. To what level do the leagues track the extreme weather trends and create contingency plans? What are some of the backup plans for rescheduling or cancelling games, reimbursing fans, paying staff, protecting stadia, etc.? Now, I mean, the problem is, Kieran, that there are many people in the world who run businesses who don't believe that there is a correlation between climate change and industry. So they would think this is not, and I presume this is a question with a sort of 10-year arc in the answer, isn't it?
Yes, and I also suspect Sarah wasn't wearing a MAGA cap when she wrote this particular question.
You think?
But I think it is a very valid question, and we have had somebody from climate change on the show, and it was quite alarming listening to what they had to say at the time in respect of the number of football stadia that are in vulnerable positions in terms of floodplains, in terms of potential consequences of severe weather. At present, clubs just take the traditional cross your fingers and hope approach. But I think going forwards, if climate change does accelerate in terms of the impact, in terms of severity of heat and cold and so on, we're not old enough to remember the winter of 62, 63, which was, but I have seen the Pathé newsreels.
Yeah.
And it was quite spectacular. But I'm also, it wasn't that long ago when having matches postponed due to weather events was quite a common occurrence. It has become less so in recent years, simply because clubs now have greater protection of their pitches, especially in the higher leagues, because the broadcasters invest so much money in the product. Cancelling a match and the ramifications for that, especially now that we have moved to the expanded environment in terms of, said it, didn't I? An expanded environment involving more and more fixtures. This is going to
just saying this, but it's one person, Kieran. Sod him.
Because we've got an expanded Champions League, we've got all of the pressure put on in terms of what we saw in Qatar, for the 2022 World Cup, where that effectively split a season, and so on. So clubs are looking at all of the available dates, and they are realising, especially at Premier League elite level, that they cannot afford to have more than one match a season, in all probability, that is affected by weather, because they simply cannot fit the others' fixtures in unless they're going to play Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, or some equally obscene combination, which, it has to be said, when we were playing park football, we would simply, at the end of the season, we just took that as read.
This person who said you shouldn't say in respect of, Kieran, was it Barry Glendenning by any chance? Because he's clearly got into your head. Glendenning and Rushton have just tweeted you under a false. And also, you mentioned in that 62-63 season, the freezing season, there will be climate change deniers go, you see, it was cold in 1962. How do you explain that? Well,
I don't think it's the cold we're so worried about, actually, in 2024.
Yeah, well, also, I think it's interesting where Sarah talks about major tournaments. The sad fact is that most people who accept that climate change is happening also accept that it's going to have an impact, I beg your pardon, on third world countries more than other countries. And those countries will not be holding major tournaments anyway. So
that's true.
Any forward planning won't take that into account, will it?
Yes, but we do have a FIFA World Cup taking place in the summer of 2026 in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And again, you or I are well old enough to remember the last time the World Cup took place in the United States. And I think it's fair to say that Jack Charlton and John Aldrich were not particularly appreciative, to give a couple of examples. And Steve Staunton, how he was allowed out on the pitch, given the weather the Irish Republic had to play on, looking like Steve Staunton, is still a miracle of science, as far as I'm concerned.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Talk to your specialist about Botox Cosmetic, Anabotulinum Toxin A, because Botox Cosmetic Day is back on November 20th. For one day only, buy one $50 gift card, get one free, while supplies last. It gets better because it's not just one day of celebration, but the whole month of November. Refer a friend to Ali and you'll both get $50 off a Botox cosmetic treatment. Plus, if you register and get treated during November 1st to 30th, you have the chance to win $10,000. For prescribing information and box warning, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300. No purchase necessary for sweepstakes entry. Treatment must occur by 12/6. For full official rules, offer terms and conditions, and to join Ali, visit BotoxCosmeticDay.com.
Miles Zeller has our next question, and I assume, like Sarah, Miles may also be American. As Miles says, in Major League Baseball, Shohei Ohtani's contract with the LA Dodgers is worth $700 million. However, his salary over the 10-year contract will only be $2 million a year, with the remaining $680 million to be paid out after the end of his contract in order to circumvent the MLB's luxury tax. Has a luxury tax ever been considered by the Premier League? If enacted, how would it change the landscape of the Premier League?
This is a fascinating question. Thank you very much for this, Miles, because I, for one, have suggested a luxury tax in football, and I know that it has been considered by other people with a vague interest, or more than a vague interest, in the finances of the game. There are complications for people not familiar with a luxury tax. It effectively says that if you spend more than X amount on wages, then for every extra pound in wages that you pay, you have to pay so much in tax. Now, I've suggested this, for example, in respect of the transfer fees, that if we agree that clubs can spend so much on transfers in a year, you want to spend more, I did my calculations based on setting the tax at 500%. So it does act as quite a big deterrent. But if that's what you want to do, if you are a billionaire, if you are a sovereign wealth fund, if that's what you really want to do, well, you can do so. But if you want to spend £10 million on a player, it's going to cost you £50 million in tax on top. So it does act as quite a big disincentive. And this is the same when it comes to US franchise sports. So one of the ways that they're getting around this, and I think the LA Dodgers is Todd Bowley's team, which might therefore explain why Chelsea have been so creative when it comes to their financial statements in terms of the long contracts for players, which effectively acts in a similar way to what we've got in Shohei Ohtani's contract, that you're spreading the cost over a longer period of time, the sale of real estate assets to other parts of the empire and so on. So it certainly is something which has been considered. It has not generated a lot of traction. And the reason for that, in my view, is that club owners would have to vote 14-6 in favour of it. And I can't see Steve Parish or Tony Bloom or any of the clubs of our size, for want of a better phrase, being in favour of this, because it effectively says to a multi-billionaire, what happens, for example, if Elon Musk decided that he was going to buy a football club? He's worth tens and tens of billions, and he could easily pay 100 million, an extra 100 million pounds on wages, or an extra 100 million pounds on transfer fees for his team, and pays the 500 million tax, because it just becomes an executive toy. So getting 14 club owners to vote in favour of this, because it would disadvantage the other clubs, is something that I don't think that it would have enough traction, and therefore it's never been seriously considered in terms of what the Premier League has put to a vote with its members.
But who is the luxury tax paid to, though, Kieran? Because it occurs to me that clubs like Bournemouth, Palace, Southampton, for example, if Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea were to happily pay £500 million luxury tax, and that was a lot of that was heading towards Bournemouth, Palace, and Southampton, wouldn't they not be happy with that? Is it the other clubs it's paid to, or is it just the Premier League in general?
It would be paid to the Premier League, who would then distribute it to the members of the Premier League. So it would circle back. And certainly when I modelled it, I think I estimated that if you gave 75% to the Premier League and 25% to the EFL, the numbers could certainly help. But it would still be giving a huge advantage to whichever clubs decided to adopt and pay the luxury tax in the first place. There's nothing wrong with it. If a rich person wants to spend money on football, provided they ring fence that money, and again, that's something which we need to do. We'd have to have it in the form of a bond if you're going to spend that extra money. Then there's absolutely, I can't see any major losers. The players would benefit, but certainly the fans of that club would benefit. You could argue that fans of other clubs would be at a disadvantage, but you'd have to spend an awful lot of money to guarantee a step up. We've seen clubs who have been taken over the course of the last 10 years. And I was looking at some documentation today, and of the 20 clubs in the Premier League, I think 9 of whom have been owned for less than a decade. So owners are coming into the Premier League all the time, and new owners are coming in. They pay a lot of money to buy the club. They'd have to be extremely rich to be able to afford such a luxury tax. But I guess the argument is that one or two of them perhaps are of that stature already, or it could attract other people of that stature who want to make a statement.
We know there was quite a bit of publicity about your discussion of Stoke City's finances, Kieran, in the last few seasons. So presumably, if the EFL was to introduce a luxury tax, that would be very good news for Stoke City and Bet365, would it?
It would be, provided they want to pay it. And certainly, if you take a look at some of the noises which were coming out of Stoke City in terms of their chief executive making public pronouncements, his argument was, why can't we do it? Who are the losers? Yes, it's clearly Stoke City are potential beneficiaries. But if there is an opportunity to recycle further money back into all of the EFL, then there can be a broader base of beneficiaries. The fact that Stoke are owned by Bet365 gets me onto one of my other soapboxes, which I think there should be a football bet levy, which again could be cycled into the game. And that would be a way forward of making sure that money goes into the game. Now, making sure that it's spent correctly is a separate issue, and I think there would have to be checks and balances, but you could build up an infrastructure fund, you could build up an academy fund. I think there's many things that you could do by taking such an approach.
Noah Goodliff has an interesting question, Kieran. Noah says, how does travelling abroad for players, managers, coaches and staff work? For example, European away days and pre-season tours, as they are there to play football and therefore to work, do they get short-term work visas? Are they sorted somehow centrally through UEFA, presumably, rather than nation to nation?
Right. As I understand it, if you are an overseas citizen and you are coming to do some consultancy work in the UK, provided it is below a stated number of days, and I think it's probably 90 days, that if you want to do a bit of work here, then that's okay. If you are going to be at a football club overseas for a period of 24 hours, that would be well within that particular remit. Where it starts to get complicated is if you are having tournaments overseas. And this is one of the items that FIFA insist upon. And we give FIFA stick at times, we give FIFA praise at times. But what they do, and I can see why they take this particular approach. If you want to host the World Cup, then you've now got people from 32, we're going up to 40, of course, different countries coming to your country, and they will be earning money for the course of that month. So should they be taxed by the host country? FIFA always insists that is not the case. If you want to sign up to host the FIFA World Cup, there will be correspondence between FIFA, and indeed as part of the application, you'd have to get a commitment from your government to not tax these players who could be there for 4 to 6 weeks, because that would probably go beyond the threshold. I've been in Belgium today. I'm getting paid for that, but I'm not paying tax in Belgium because it doesn't go beyond a long-term employment threshold.
It does raise quite a pleasing image, though, of Marcus Rashford arriving in Belgium for a game and being asked reason for visit. Tam Byrne has a question, Kieran, which I think could take a whole pod to answer. So I'm really interested to see how you deal with this, considering you're jet lagged. I almost said hovercraft lagged then, Kieran, but that would have dated me, wouldn't it? Tam Byrne says, I'm an agent of 20 years. In recent years, every CEO, sporting director or chairman pushed back on the proposals of a deal, claiming they're up against it with regards to their FFP allowances. Have you or anyone else kept an up-to-date track of the championship spending/losses to be able to accurately answer back these claims with authority? I take exception to Tam saying anyone else. What do you mean anyone else? Of course, no one else has done it. Have you done so, Kieran? To back? I mean, it seems
that Swiss Ramble will have done this as well. Yeah, the mighty Kieran O'Connor will have done this as well. Yes, I do keep a tracker in terms of losses made per club, per division. And under the rules of the championship, it's £13 million a season for each year in the championship and 13 million for every year in the EFL and 35 million for every year in the Premier League. So I do monitor that. The problem that I have, Tam, is I have the sort of the dirty figures from the accounts.
Ooh.
What you then have to do...
The dark web figures.
That's right. The figures from my very good friends at Companies House. There is a difference between an FFP profit, or PSR profit as we should strictly call it, and the figures in the accounts. And then you've got to do a bit of sort of finger in the air type of adjustment. But yes, I do have a rough and ready idea of individual clubs. And this is sort of, it sounds like the CEOs and sporting directors are sort of, you know what it's like when you go to Workman around, you got a problem with a window, or you take the car for the MOT, and that sound that they make as they suck in breath through their cheeks before saying, "Oh, I'd love to, but PSR can't afford to pay your lad as much as you want, or as much as we had perhaps suggested earlier in this conversation. So yes, there is data out there. How accurate that data is, and I can't claim that my data is accurate in terms of FFP losses or PSR losses, but I certainly do have the figures for all of the clubs in the Championship going back probably the last decade or so, if not a wee bit longer.
Yeah, what sort of cowboy did this amortisation deal? Well, you should have got a professional. We have reached a stage, though, Kieran, I think, where almost everybody in the game, including fans, will explain any bizarre decision by going, "Oh, it's PSR, and it's FFP. They couldn't do it. That's why they sold him. That's why he's got this contract. That's why he's got this 3-year deal." And we're all kind of we say these things without fully realising or understanding what they mean.
I think we have become conditioned to believe that any level of expenditure of an individual club, which does not meet the expectations of the fan base, the noises that will come from the club is, yeah, we'd love to have spent a couple of $100 million more, but it's not us, it's PSR. Completely ignoring the fact that who created and who voted for PSR in the first place, it was the club owners. And I think this is a sort of a slightly nuanced part of the broad discussion in relation to football clubs. We talk about football clubs as if they have views, they have opinions. Well, they don't. It comes down to the owners. The owners set the culture. The owners set the tone. And this was, going back to the live show that we did, that was very clear. Sort of having a culture of a club, or having a culture club, even is. Try that one, kids. Does make a difference.
Yeah, I think I also deserve kudos, Kieran, for in Noah's question about European away days, not mentioning the fact that every second comment made in Brighton towards me was about the fact that Palace haven't played in Europe. I was very good, Kieran. I could have gone on about it.
You were.
I could have gone about the Anglo-Italian Cup. I didn't.
Exactly. And this is why I think we deserve to win the FSA Best Podcast Award, because you've had to take a lot of slack, and you took it in very good grace.
Well, also, Kieran, we deserve to win it because we are a superior product. That's why. And, we shouldn't be down by the tyranny of the majority. This is why I'm on Man City's side for once. The tyranny of the majority is an outrage. We have seen in particular, Villa in particular recently have publicly stated that they would love to do more, but they can't because of FFP, haven't they?
They have. They proposed an increase in the PSR allowance from £105 million to £135 million because there has been no increase over the course of the introduction of these rules, which came in 2013. So your PSR losses as a percentage of revenue or the allowable PSR losses as a percentage of revenue have substantially decreased. And indeed, this was a question from a listener that we covered 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was one of those things which generated a healthy debate, shall we say, on social media.
Yeah, our last 2 questions, Kieran, actually relate back to earlier questions. And the first one is about FIFA and taxes. And this question comes from David Entwistle, and I think this is a really interesting one. And David says, do Monaco have a financial advantage over the rest of Ligue 1 due to the much lower taxes paid by residents and corporations there?
They do indeed. And if you talk to players and their representatives, they will say, and I think Ken Bates sort of used to grumble about this. He says, Chelsea are now starting to recruit overseas players, and I was contacted by Ruud Gullit's agent, and he's just talking about what the player earns netto, and that's actually a valid argument. If I'm a player, especially if I'm effectively a global footballer, such as Ruud Gullit, who's certainly for me one of the best players I've ever seen live on a pitch, just unstoppable. He was he came to Main Road, I think it was, when City was still playing there. I think the City was, and he just tore them apart single-handed in one particular match. So he can go anywhere. So therefore, his representatives are looking for the best deal for the player. And it's a bit like the phrase that we glibly use in the world of finance, that revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. Well, for a football player, gross is vanity, but ultimately your net pay is sanity. Your net pay is what you should be taking into focus, and that would give people playing in Monaco or playing for Monaco a financial advantage over the rest of the French Football League.
I met Ruud Gullit a couple of times on different shows and had this conversation about how, because he's a really cool guy, really cool.
Yes, I can imagine.
And he said, I'm not particularly, but you people think that Dutch people are really cool, full stop. But he said it in a Dutch accent. So I said, well, that's really cool because you said it in a Dutch accent. If you'd said that in my accent, it wouldn't sound cool, but he's just, Dutch and Belgian people are cool. Paul Salvin has our last question, and it relates back to Sarah Wilson's climate change story. And I think Paul Salvin's question is so sensible that I'm looking forward to you finding a reason to tell us why we're both wrong. Because Paul Salvin says, with non-league football so adversely affected by bad winter weather in recent years, would it make sense to switch to a March to November season? And I can't see any downside to this question, because I would love to spend the summer going to see Tooting Mitcham, Sutton, various other clubs, rather than having to watch cricket.
Okay, promotion and relegation to the EFL. When's that going to take place?
Oh, yeah, okay.
You see, yeah. So we got the whole point about the football ecosystem is that it is consistent in terms of clubs going up and down, which is so important. If you're going to play March to November and you get promoted, do you then have to wait till the following August before you can play your first matches in the EFL? Yeah, clubs can't wait that long. So it would have to be a complete shift for all football, and that won't take place because the best time to use your multifunction stadium to host concerts is, of course, the summer. And it wouldn't work from a logistical point of view. I think we've seen Spurs today drop Tottenham Hotspur, haven't they, from their new crest? And that's because that at that particular club, you've got more non-football match events taking place at the stadium than you've got football events.
I knew you'd have some kind of mature, grown-up reason why we couldn't do this, but
it'll piss off the groundsman as well.
But having, on a serious note, though, if you look at clubs like Tooting Mitcham, for example, who are never going to get anywhere near the EFL, there is a whole level of football to which that argument doesn't apply. There's a whole level of football who won't be putting concerts on. So I think for them, if you were to say below the National League South level, it seems to me to make perfect sense, because just in terms of numbers coming through the gate, you would get. I think you'd get 500 people more per game, if they were playing March to November.
You would, and indeed you could, but again, there has to be there is at some point a promotion from below National League South to Isthmian League or its equivalent, or Northern Prem, which become the feeder leagues. So wherever you have that inconsistency, there is a potential problem. And it's a shame, because I quite like the idea of summer football as well. I don't think the Baroness would.
Fair point. Paul, I think it's a really good idea. Let's take the notice of the suits, the straights,
the establishment.
Thank you to everyone who's donated to Pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution That would be very kind of you. You'll also get access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you've got a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter X and find us on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to buy our book, you can find details of that on our website, priceoffootball.com, or you can go to a bookshop or any of those websites that sell books. It's out now in paperback. We've been nominated for the Podcast of the Year at the Football Supporters Association Awards. If you love the show, we would very much appreciate your vote. You can go to the FSA website or click the link in the show notes to help us cause the upset of the season. I got told I was on TalkSport on Saturday morning, Kieran, doing their TalkSport likely to listen to this, doing their How Tall quiz. Which I won 3-0, and then we got obviously the producer had a word in the ear of Charlie Baker, because Max Ruston and I got into a little debate about who should win the FSA Awards, which clearly the producer said, well, we haven't been nominated for anything, so stop with talking about this. We have to find out how tall Andy Cole is, basically. We'll be back on...
Well, San Marino have won tonight and just been promoted in the Nations League, so the little one can do it against the establishment. So we're not giving up. Right,
I'll tell you what, Ken, I'll do a deal. If we win, you and I are going to do a live pod in San Marino.
Yes,
how's that?
That is a definite deal.
Yeah, in front of 25 bemused San Marinans. What these two people doing it? We'll be back on Thursday for our regular news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always, everybody on Patreon, everybody that interacts with us, everybody that corrects my too often used phrase, which I have now become paranoid about. I'd also like to have a special shout out. I give quite a lot of talks to people connected to other clubs and so on, because as a public servant and as a nerd, I'm more than happy to talk football finance to an awful lot of people. In the past few weeks, I've given a couple of talks. One was to Everton Shareholders Association. This is not including Farhad Moshiri. It's the people that owe the other 5.4% of Everton, and also the fantastic people at Spirit of Shankly. And on both occasions, they said, how much do you want for it? And I go, I'm not interested. But this is a sign of part of the reason why I love the city of Liverpool. On both occasions, they said, well, that's not good enough, and we want to give some charity donations. So they spontaneously have given money to Samaritans, who we did the show for last week, and also to Trussell, the food bank charity. And just a big shout out for them. I occasionally do deliveries, which is one of the most humbling things. I thought I'd be out delivering food feeling quite good about myself, and actually I just realised just how privileged I am. So they do a fantastic job. It's a terrible indictment of this country that food banks become one of the most successful industries over the course of the last decade or two. And I'll get off my soapbox now, but it's something we need to address.
It is, but we also need to address the fact that I think every single club in the 92 and below will have their own links with local food banks, and are doing stuff. So, yeah, we can be ashamed of some things, but we can be very proud of some other things, Kieran. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The price of football. The price of football.